and welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. And it's me, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. And I'm here with another resource capacity modeling demo. Now, I did a video on resource capacity modeling in Excel where I showed you the power of Power Query and Power Pivot working together and how you could do capacity modeling. And I got a lot of interest in that video, a lot of interest. So I thought I'd do another video and we'll go a little bit deeper into capacity modeling. Instead of using the project manager and looking at capacity across many projects, I thought I'd do a whole team. Let me explain. So first we have our demand. So we have a number of projects in our portfolio with a start and finish date. They've been assessed based on the type of project, and we've given them a resource matrix profile number based on that type of project. With this now done, we need to understand the resource allocation based on that project type. So we've created a resource matrix and we've linked that to our projects via the resource matrix profile number. That then gives us the ability to define what type of allocation of resources we need for that project, as demonstrated here in this data. Now, once we've got our demand figured out, we need to understand, can we deliver it? So we need to define our capacity by skill set. So here we have a capacity table where we've defined the capacity for our skill sets. So we've got 2 project managers, 3 BAs, etc. We then need to pull all that together in a working week. So what's our weekly working pattern for our organization? So here we have Monday to Friday, 8 hours a day defined. So that's a 40-hour working week and not working weekends. So with all that data in there, within this Change Tips and Tools video, I'm going to show you how to do the resource capacity modeling, utilizing the power of Power Query and Power Pivot. And there is a link in the description to a support file so you can follow along. So click that link, download that file, and let's together build a resource capacity model. Come on, let's do this. So based on this data, let's see how quickly I can figure out whether I've got enough resources in my resource pool to satisfy these projects. Yep. So let's get these into tables first of all. So let's convert this to a table. So I'm going to select it all and do Control T. Let's do, yeah, it's got headings. And again, as I've always said, you need to name your tables meaningfully. So this is going to be, so on the table design ribbon, I'm going to do TBL. I'm going to do demand. So that's my demand. Let's take this one. So this is going to be my capacity. So I'm going to select it and do Control T. As headers, let's call this TBL capacity. Oop. Hit return. Let's select my resource matrix and do Control T data. Do OK. Let's name this TBL resource matrix. And then finally, I've got my working pattern here. Control T, do OK, and again I'm going to call this TBL working pattern. So let's get these loaded into Power Query. Now, first, before I carry on, a bit of housekeeping. If you've not got, and apologies for the banging and the noises in the background, but I'm here in the UK and it's bonfire night, so there's lots of fireworks going off outside the office. So I'm going to select, if you don't see this Power Pivot, the way that you get it and make it visible, you do File, Options, go down to Add-ins. On the Manage here, do the drop down, choose Com Add-ins and do Go. And you'll see here Microsoft Power Pivot for Excel. Just make sure you got that ticked and it'll then be available. You only have to do it once on your machine and it'll always be available. I've already got it, so I'm going to click cancel and not OK. Okay. So, so first of all, let's just get these into Power Query. So I'm going to take the demand table. I'm going to do data, and from table and range. And let's rename this to be demand data. Yeah. And I'm going to do close and load 2. I'm going to create connection only and add it to my Power Pivot data model and do OK. So there's my first table in Power Query. Let's take the capacity, and again I'm going to do data from table and range, and let's rename this to be capacity data. Do return. Okay, and again I'm going to do close and load 2. I'm going to only create a connection and do add to data model and click OK. Let's take the resource matrix. Yep. And again, data ribbon from table and range. I'm going to call this, get rid of the table on the front. Do a space and hit return. Again, I'm going to do close and load 2. And do create connection only and add it to the data model. And then finally, I want my my working pattern here. So with that selected, I'm going to do from table to range again on the data ribbon. And I'm going to name this as my working pattern and do return. And then I'm going to do close and load 2. And again, create connection and add it to my data model. Now, one of the things I guarantee will happen when you've got tables is that your users will accidentally create blank rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a blank row and then just tell Power Query how to deal with it. So add in a blank row to all of these, like so. So we've all got a blank row. And again, I'm just going to right click here and do edit. And now I'm just going to reorder these in here. So I'm going to move my working pattern to the top. I'm then going to want my resource matrix. And then I'm going to want to do my demand and then capacity. I'm going to do some other things as well. So the working pattern. So let's look at that. Yeah. And if I do a refresh, you'll see there's the null row there. And again, I'm just going to do refresh the preview for all. So I can now see the null row in each one. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my null row. So I'm going to untick it. Now, because there's only ever going to be one row on this, the way that it will write that filter argument is it will say what it equals 8. But I don't want it. I want it to say does not equal null. There we go. So that's now done. I want these to all be decimals. So I'm going to select all the columns, and on the home ribbon, I'm going to change the data type to a decimal number. I then want these column headings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on to be actual values down the left with then the actual hours working pattern. Yeah. So again, with them all selected, I'm going to select them all, right click, and I'm going to choose on pivot columns. So now I've got them going running down from vertically there. I'm going to change the heading here to be day name. Yeah. And as far as the value here, I'm going to call this my WP, as in working pattern hours, and do return. So that's my first one. So that's my working pattern now done. So let's look at the resource matrix. And here again, I'm just going to get rid of that null. And because there's more than one value, it will say automatically, if I look at that cog there, does not equal null. So that's perfect. And then it's going to do some change some of the format in here. So that's fine. It's a whole number. That's a text. But the hourly rate is going to be currency. Allocation is going to be a percentage. Data type. Perfect. So that's now done. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to reference this because I want to get a distinct list of my skill sets. So I'm going to right click on that and do reference. Let's just move that up. Yeah, and I'm going to call this skill set. Hit return. I'm going to select my skill set column, right click on it and do remove other columns. I'm then going to, on the home ribbon, do remove rows and remove duplicates. And for good measure, I'm just going to sort it ascending. So it's now sorted. So that's now my skill sets. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do close and load to. Place a connection only and add it to the data model. So I'm going to create a relationship in there so I can filter my views on that. I'm then going to do the next thing, which is going to be my demand data. So we've got 24 rows here. So this is where we're going to start doing some exciting stuff. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to do edit. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of the null row again. So I'm going to do filter and just get rid of that null. So I've now got my project. I've got my resource matrix profile number. That is a number. Got my start and finish date. So just because I'm OCD, I don't want it to be date and time. So I'm going to change that to a date only, like so. And I now want to bring this resource matrix into my demand data. So I've got project 1, it's profile, resource profile 2. So I want to bring through for resource matrix profile 2 the allocations for the project manager, business analyst, architect, SME and PMO. And I want to bring that through into my demand data. So this row will become 5 rows representing these 5 resources. But how do I do that? It's easy. I just so happen to know a chap who knows how, i.e. me. So this is how you do it. You do add a column, custom column. Now I'm not going to change the name of this, so I'm going to use table select rows. I'm going to open bracket and do a return to escape to get that note. So the first part of the argument is I need the table, and the table is going to be my resource matrix. So let's type resource matrix. There it is. So I need to assign that resource matrix query to a variable. So I can then interrogate it to say, right, pull through all the rows in that table that match this resource matrix profile within my demand data. And the way that I assign it to a variable, then I'm going to do an open bracket. I'm going to call my variable RM for resource matrix and close the bracket, do an equal sign and do a right facing chevron. So I've now assigned that table to that variable. I can then refer to it, RM, so there it is. I'm going to do an open square bracket and I want this RM profile there where it equals the RM profile within the demand data. I'm then going to close the bracket on my select rows and do OK. So now you can see here, if I just move this up so you can see it, you can now see there the 5 resources. And then for the resource profile 1, I should have against that profile 1 there from my resource matrix. So all I've got to do is there's outward facing arrows to extrapolate that out now. So I don't want the RM profile, but I do want the skill set, I want the hourly rate and the allocation, but I don't want the original column name. I'm going to untick that and then click OK. So now you can see that this first project has now got 5 rows against it, which created a row for each resource type. Yeah, perfect. So let's change this on home and change that to be text. As far as the data type, the hourly rate is going to be currency. So again, I'm going to change that to currency. And the allocation is going to be a percentage. So let's change that data type to a percentage, like so. Perfect. So now I've done that, the next thing I want to do is I want to now extrapolate this further based on start to finish date. So I want to create a list of these, i.e. my demand, based on the start and finish date of the project. Yeah, and the way that I'm going to do that is create another custom column. So I'm going to do add column, I'm going to do custom, and I'm going to call this date. So I'm going to create a list here. So I'm going to do an open curly bracket. I'm going to use a number from function, and I'm going to do a number from the start date. So what I'm bringing in actual fact, because I can't do a list based on date in this way. I've got to do it based on the date code, yeah, the date number code here. So I'm going to take start, close that bracket, do 2 full stops, and do number from again. And then I'm going to use the finish date. So I'm doing a number from the start date to the finish date, yeah. And then close curly bracket there as well and do OK. And then I'm going to expand those out to new rows. So there's the date codes, a list. Let's change that column type to a date. So again on the home ribbon, I'm going to change that data type to a date. So there are all my dates. So I don't need my start and finish any longer. So I'm going to select those. I'm going to do remove columns. And then the final thing that I'm going to do here in my demand data is I'm going to select the date column. I want the date, the day name, don't I? So I can then associate it with a working pattern. So what I'm going to do that with the date column, I'm going to do add column again. Do it from a date. I'm going to go down to day and choose name of day. Then you can select that day name. It's just created. And I'm going to transform ribbon, and I'm going to extract the first 3 characters. So first characters, and do the first 3 and do OK. And that now matches my working pattern. So I've now created that. So that's all I need to do for my my demand. So if I just do here and do close and load here, this 24 should go to a much larger number. Let me have a drink. 93 over 93,000 rows in an instant. Easy. So let's now go into my capacity data. So do edit. So again, I'm going to get rid of that null value that inevitably our users will do. So let's tell Power Query how to handle it, so just to remove it. And I need to create a capacity profile for each skill or resource pool here. So I've got 2 project managers, I've got 3 BAs, 1 architect, 5 subject matter experts, and I've got 3 PMOs. So I need to extrapolate that based on my demand data. So I want to take the earliest date and the latest date here and then create a resource capacity profile. So the way that I bring those dates in is, let's create my start column here. So let's do add column, custom column, and I'm going to call this my start. And I'm going to use the list min function here. So I'm going to do list min. And I'm going to reference my demand data table. So there's demand data. I'm going to do an open square bracket, and I want the date column, and I'm going to close that square bracket, and then I'm going to close the bracket on the list min and do OK. So it's pulled that first date, that earliest date. So I'm just going to change this on the home ribbon to be a date, like so. I'm going to do add column again. I'm going to do custom, and this is going to be my finish date. And again, I'm going to use the list max to find the latest date now from my demand data. So I'm going to do list max. And again, my demand data, do open bracket, I want the date. Close that square bracket and then close the bracket on the list max. And that's the latest date. So let's change this to a date data type. So on the home ribbon, change the data type to date. And there you go. So now I can, in the same way I did in the demand data, I can extrapolate this out now to multiple rows using the start and finish date. So again, let's do add column, custom column. It's going to be called date. Yeah. And I'm going to do the open curly bracket, number from open bracket. Let's choose the start. Close that bracket, 2 full stops, do number from again. Open bracket, now I want to do it to finish. Close the bracket and close this curly bracket for my list to generate my list. Do OK. And then I'm just going to expand that out by doing the outward facing arrows. Expand to new rows. Let's change that again on the home ribbon to a date. I no longer need the start and finish, so I can remove those. So remove columns, and then I just need to add the day name again, so I can then associate it with a working pattern. So with the date column selected, I'm going to do add column, do date, I'm going to do day, and do name of day. I'm then going to select that day name and do transform, and I want to extract those first 3 characters. So first characters, and do 3 and do OK, and there we go. So I've now got my capacity data. So there's one more thing that I need here, and I need my calendar master to be able to pull all this together, yeah, in my Power Pivot model. So I'm going to do, on the home ribbon, I'm going to do new source, other sources, I'm going to do blank query. So I need to generate a master calendar, and I'm going to base it on my demand data. Again, a bit like the capacity data, what's the earliest date and the latest date, and that will then govern my calendar size. And it's quite powerful, this, because obviously it means my calendar and my capacity data will grow based on the demand data that comes in. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to, once I've got into my blank queries, let's just call this calendar. Yeah, do return. I'm then going to go to my advanced editor. So this is what I need to fill this source variable with values and output it. Yeah. So the way that I'm going to do that is, first of all, I need to create some variables here. So I want my start date. So I'm going to assign the list min again, and I'm going to go to my demand data, open square bracket, and I'm going to take the date. And after that closed bracket there, I'm going to do a comma and do a new line. I'm going to assign a date value to my finish variable, which equals list max. And again, I'm going to do demand data, do an open square bracket and do date again. I'm going to do a comma after that. I'm going to get rid of these double quotation marks. So what I'm going to fill that source variable is a list of dates. So I'm going to use the list dates function. I'm going to do an open bracket, and the first part of the argument is my start. So there's my start date there, that variable. So I'm going to start typing start. I'm going to select it there. I then need to know the duration, or a count of how far do I need to go from my start. So I'm going to use the duration function. So the duration function in days, and the calculation to get that days is going to be my finish date minus my start date. Yeah, and just go outside that bracket there, duration days, and do +1. And that's how I get my duration, or my count. Yeah. And then the last part is, what's the step? So I need to do it a step in days. So I'm going to use the hash duration function, do an open bracket. So I want 1 day, I want 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. So that's going to be my list of dates, and I'm going to output that. So I'm going to do done. And there you go, there's my list of dates. So I'm going to convert that to a table and do OK. And I'm going to double click on this column and call it date. And I'm going to change it on my home ribbon to a date, like so. And now what I want to do here is I want to then get the day name again, like I've done before. So I'm going to do add column, date, day, and I'm going to name of day. Let's transform that to the first three letters. So I'm going to transform, extract, first characters, and I'm going to do 3 and do OK. Now, so based on that, yeah, I've got my working pattern up here. I should be able to bring that. So the way I'm going to do that into here is I'm going to do, on the home ribbon, I'm going to do merge queries, first one. And I'm going to put, so I've got my calendar there. I'm going to bring in the working pattern, and the key or the index is going to be day name and day name. Click OK. Then I'm going to expand this. I just want the working hours. I'm going to select that. I don't want the original column name. I'm going to do OK. And there are my hours. Perfect. So again, I'm just going to do that calendar. I'm just going to do close and load to, create connection only, and add it to my my data model and do OK. So let's let that refresh. And done. Now, I'm just going to move this up. So I'm going to right click on that and do move up, so I can change the order that way as well. So that's how I want it to refresh. Okay, that's everything we need to do in Power Query done. It's now time to move to the second part of this relationship, which is Power Pivot. So we need to do some data modeling. So I'm going to click on Power Pivot ribbon, click on Manage, and I'm going to go to my diagram view and create some relationships. So let's move some things around here. So I don't need resource matrix, I don't need to create any more relationships. Demand data and capacity data I want the skill set, and I want the calendar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the date column, and I'm going to create a relationship between my calendar and my demand data and my capacity data, so I can bring that into my calendar. So I'm going to do date, drag and drop it on date in the demand data, and that's created a one-to-many relationship. You can see there. Now, within Power Pivot, if you remember, you cannot create many-to-many relationships. At least one of those tables has to have unique unique elements in it. For example, calendar can only have one date. Yeah, so it can only have one 1st of January 2025, if that makes sense. It must have unique values. Now I'm going to drag date here over to date in capacity data as well. And again, a one-to-many relationship. And then because I want to be able to filter on skill set across both my tables, I'm going to drag skill set and drop it on skill set in demand data. And again, I've got that one-to-many. And I'm going to do the same for my skill set in capacity data as well, and one-to-many. So now I've created those relationships, I'm now going to start doing my calculations. So in demand data, I'm going to do that in a minute. So I'm going to focus on capacity data first. And I want to understand what is my capacity in hours. So to be able to do that, first thing I need to do is I need to bring through the working pattern hours. And because of that relationship here that I've created now between where I've got working pattern hours in the calendar, I can now do that using the related function. And this is how you do it. So I'm going to click on add column. So first of all, the first part is the name of the column. So I'm going to call this WP, working pattern hours. So that's the name of the column. I'm going to do colon equals for the calculation, and I'm going to use related. And then I'm going to go to calendar, and I'm going to select working pattern hours there. And then close the bracket on related and hit return. And there are my working pattern hours. I'm going to change that to a decimal number. And there you go. Now to get my capacity in hours, the calculation is simply working pattern hours times my capacity, or in my head count. So 3 BAs, for example, here for that day. So again, I'm going to click on add column. And I'm going to call this column capacity. Can't type capacity. in hours. So that's the name of the column, colon equals. I'm going to do open square bracket, take working pattern hours times capacity, and hit return. And then I'm going to turn that into a decimal number. So those are my calculated columns in my capacity data table. So that's my capacity data done. So let's go to my demand data. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to change the formatting on these. So let's make that currency. So English pounds as my hourly rate, and this allocation is a percentage. Boom. So again, like the capacity data, I need to bring in the working pattern. So I'm going to do in the add column, I'm going to call that. So click in the formula bar, I'm going to call this WP hours and do colon equals, and again do related. And I want the working pattern hours again. Close the bracket and do return. Let's make that a decimal. So now I've got the working pattern hours. I now need to know what the demand in hours is. So that's going to be my working pattern hours times the allocation. So this is the percentage of allocation of a resource. So saying this subject matter expert is 40%. So based on a 5-day week, that's 2 days a week. That's what that is. So again, I'm going to click on add column. I'm going to call this capacity hours. Do colon equals. The calculation is my working pattern hours times the allocation. Hit return. And just make sure that's a decimal format number. So now my next thing I want to pull through is my demand cost, which is going to be my capacity hours. And of course, this is not capacity, it's demand. So let's just go back to this and let's make sure we read. So if I want to rename something, I'm going to double click on the header and I'm going to call that demand hours, not capacity. There you go. That's better. That's what we want it to be called. So demand hours. So I'm going to do add column again. So I'm going to demand cost. So I'm just going to cost the stakeholders. So demand cost colon equals, and the calculation is going to be my demand hours times my hourly rate. And do a return. And there you go. Almost call that capacity then. So this is going to be demand cost, so it's going to be again a currency, so English pounds here in Blighty. So now that's all the calculated columns that I need in my demand data. So I've got my capacity data, I've got my working pattern hours, so I've got, it allows me to calculate my capacity in hours. I've got my demand data where I can see what my demand hours and what the cost of that demand is, yeah. So my demand hours times the hourly rate. Perfect. Now let's bring all that together within our calendar. So I'm just going to make this column a little bit bigger so you can see. So below this dividing line, I'm now going to create some measures. Yeah, I'm not going to create any additional columns. I'm going to create some measures. And that is just another way of referring to a formula. So I'm going to click on this cell here and I'll start typing. It won't appear in here, so it's a little bit disorientating. It won't appear here initially, but you'll see it appearing in the formula bar. So the first thing I want to calculate is my total capacity, open bracket, hours. So what's my total hours? So that's the name of the measure. I'm going to do colon equals, and the calculation is going to be sum. Yeah, and I'm going to sum my capacity hours. Yeah, double click that, close the bracket, and hit return. So that's my total capacity in hours. I'm going to make that a decimal. So now I want to know what my demand is in hours. So again, click the next one below, start typing total. You can see it's appearing up here. So total demand hours, close the bracket, colon equals, and do sum. So I'm going to get this from the demand table, and I want my demand hours there. Close the bracket on the sum, hit return. There's my demand, make that a decimal also. I also want to see my total cost, so I'm going to do total demand. I'm going to do open bracket cost, close that bracket, colon equals, and I'm going to do sum. I'm going to get that from my demand table, and there's my demand cost. And click and hit return. Let's make that again a currency. So now I want to understand. So I want to calculate head count. So because it's a better way of visualizing stuff. You can look at it by capacity hours and capacity demand, and say what's my remaining hours or remaining availability. But I'm going to do it by head count here. So I'm going to do, but I need to be able to calculate that. So the first part of the calculation is, for example, the capacity in hours. What's my capacity head count? But I need to know what my total working hours available are from my calendar. So I'm going to type working hours, which is driven by that working pattern. I'm going to do colon equals, and I'm going to do sum, and I'm going to get it from my working pattern hours in the calendar here. Close the bracket on the sum, hit return. So that now gives me my total working hours available. So I'm just going to make that decimal again. So what's my total capacity in hours? So if I do, let's do capacity, head count, yeah, do colon equal. So the calculation is going to be my total capacity in hours divided by, open square bracket, my working hours, yeah, and do return. That gives me a total head count. So I'm going to make that a decimal again. And let's do my demand head count. So let's do demand. Oh, can't type. Right, head count, do colon equals. And again, the calculation this time is going to be open square bracket. So that's my total demand in hours divided by open square bracket working hours. Hit return. Let's make that a decimal. Now, whilst we can see there's a potential problem there, this is not time sensitive because we're just looking at a lump sum of everything that's in here at the moment, not over a period of time. So let's do remaining head count. So that gives us an idea of what we've got left. Remaining. So remaining head count is going to be basically, demand minus capacity, what's left over. So that's going to be my capacity minus, open square bracket, my demand head count. And hit return. Let's make that a decimal again. So that is all my calculations done for now. So I'm just going to save that, and then I'm going to close down Power Pivot, and let's create two new tabs. So I'm going to do rename that. Let's call it my pivot tables and hit return. Let's add a summary sheet or something to visualize stuff with. So rename that. So it could be analysis or summary. I'll call it summary. Let's go back to my pivot table. And then I'm going to select here in column B, anywhere around here, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to do insert, and I'm going to do insert pivot table from data model. And that's where I'm going to put it, in that cell. So let's go to calendar. So these are all the tables that are in our data model. So I'm going to open that calendar table. I'm going to take the date and I'm going to drop it in the row like so. I don't want quarter in there, so I'm just going to remove that and drop it off. So I'm going to right click on the year here and do expand and collapse and do expand entire field. And then on the month of the first month, January here, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to do expand and collapse, and I'm going to collapse that entire field. So I just see year and then the months. Yeah. I'm then going to scroll down here and I am going to look at my demand headcount. So I've got my capacity headcount. So let's drop that in values. Let's drop the demand headcount in there and let's drop the remaining headcount in there like so. Okay, so that's now working. And then what I'm going to do is, with this pivot table selected, on the pivot table analysis ribbon, I'm going to do insert slicer. And I'm going to bring in the year here and do OK. Let's move that to here and do to select 2024. Perfect. Then one of the skill set. So again, with the pivot table selected, pivot table analysis, I'm going to do insert slicer. So at the moment, I can only see what's active in this pivot table. So I'm going to do all tab, so all the available tables in the Power Pivot. And I'm going to scroll down to the skill set. Remember, we created those relationships. I'm going to tick that and do OK. And let's move that there. And that should then filter things as well. Wonderful. So I'm going to take these two slicers and I'm going to do Control X to cut them to the clipboard, and then I'm going to go to my summary tab and I'm going to do Control V to paste them and say paste everything. I'm then going to hold down the Alt key so this just snaps to the grid here. Again, hold the Alt key down, just snap it to the grid. Yeah. There we go. Done. So I'm now going to, and I think just so you're aware, I think it's best practice to name your pivot tables again so you know what you're looking at. And ignore this comment. We've already created a relationship, so I'm just going to click X and cancel. It keeps on suggesting it when you do new things like that. So I'm going to click on pivot table analysis, and I'm going to rename this pivot table to be PVT headcount. Like so. So I know what that pivot table is. I then want to copy this and do Control Copy, and I'm going to paste here because I want to have my demand cost as well. So I'm going to get rid of these columns, and because I've copied it, it'll retain the same filters, etc., and slicer relationships. Excuse me. So again, on the calendar tab, I'm going to expand. And I'm going to bring in the total demand cost. So I've now got the total demand cost here. Now that I've got that, I'm going to do another copy of this here because I want it in my summary sheet. So I'm going to do copy because I want a slightly different orientation. And let's just give this a meaningful name, by the way. Pivot table analysis. Let's call this PVT demand cost. Hit return, so it makes sense. Let's go to summary. Let's put this, let's say there, and do Control V. And let's just change the orientation of this. So I want my day and year. So I want it to go along horizontally this time and move the month to the columns and move the date to the columns. I'm also from the calendar going to move the date name there as well. So we've now got the Monday, Tuesday, etc. there. I'm then going to just on here on the columns where we've got that values, I'm going to move that and drop it in rows. Now, there we go. Now you can see I've got this num error problem, and I've probably got the same here as well. If I expand this, yeah, I've got the num error. So if I just, I'm going to collapse that one there, collapse entire field. Yeah. So I want to get rid of this error. And that's basically because on a Saturday and Sunday, we've got no capacity in there, no working pattern hours, so it's just erroring on that. So if I go to Power Pivot, because again I like it to look clean, I'm going to go Manage, and on these two here, to get rid of that num error, I'm just going to wrap this capacity head count in an if error. So I'm going to do if error. If it's an error, I'm going to do comma, just do a 0, close the bracket on the if error, and hit return. Let's do the same on the demand. Again, wrap that in an if error. I'm going to do comma 0, so it returns a 0 if there is an error, and do return. Close that down. Get rid of that, and there we go. That's better. So now I've got that there, and I can look at different data. Yeah, I'm going to just right click on the month, and I'm going to do expand collapse and collapse entire field. Now the other thing I want to appear is I want this to look to be in red if it's a negative, because obviously it's a bad thing, we don't have capacity. And also it'll show visually as well. So if I go into this one with, so the remaining head count, I'm going to do the drop down over here and do value field settings, do number format, and I'm just going to go to the number and just make it a negative like so, and do OK. So now I can see the negatives. Perfect. So let's go to here. I want now to bring some visuals in. So let's do this one first. And I'm going to do insert. I'm going to do insert. In fact, I want that one. I want line. Insert. Line with markers. Just Control X. Go to summary. Do Control V. I'm going to right click on these fields and say hide all buttons. Let's do the plus sign here. I want the legend to be at the bottom. I do want a chart title, so let's change this title to be demand versus supply. Yeah, great. Now, what I want is I don't want this to be in the middle. I want it to be at the bottom. So with this axis selected, I'm going to do Control 1. On the labels here, I'm just going to scroll down, and here where label position, I'm going to do make it low so it's at the bottom. Perfect. That's what I want. I don't want this, so I want this to be a bar chart, not a line. So again, I'm going to right click on this and do change chart type, make it a combo. So the capacity, again, just make that a line with markers, make the demand a line with markers, but I'm going to make this column and do OK. Wonderful. And I am going to do, again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key just so this snaps. I'm going to move that to there. I'm going to add some data labels. Let's take that one. Label options, I'm going to make that above. Let's make that above as well. And again, I want this to show as a red, and I want these to be thicker. So I'm going to select the bar there, and over here, I'm just going to make it 40% the gap width, which will make these wider. And again, let's take these here and let's just make them let's look at label options inside base. Yeah, let's do outside. Yeah, let's make this here the fill. So let's manually select something here. So let's make this, let's make that like so. So it's solid. And what I'm going to do is if it's negative, I'm going to invert and I'm going to make it red. There you go. That looks a bit better, doesn't it? Yeah, that works for me. And let's just make this bold. Right. So now I've got that worked out. I don't need that open anymore, not just yet. Let's go to my pivot table. I want the cost table. So let's take the pivot table and let's do insert. And let's this time do a bar. Again, let's just Control X to cut it. Let's go to the summary. Let's put it here. Do Control V. Don't need that there. I'm going to right click on these buttons, hide all fill buttons on charts. Again, I don't want that. I'm just going to do delete on that. I don't need the legend. Let's change this to be demand cost. Good. Let's select one of the bars. Select this here. Let's make it wider. So let's do 40%. Again, let's add some data labels. Again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key just so it snaps to the grid. And there you go. So another thing I want to add here, so I don't need that anymore. So whilst that looks good, I want to be able to see the cost by project. So let's insert a slicer. So do insert, do slicer. So because I've not got a pivot table selected, I'm going to select data model, double click on the data model. And what I want to bring into this is I want to bring in, based on my demand, the project. Yeah, so I'm going to select that and do OK. So let's move this over here. And again, I'm going to use the Alt key so it snaps a little bit to the grid. But if I select one of these now, you'll notice nothing's changing. And that's because of the way that we selected it. We wasn't within a pivot table. So what I need to do now is I need to right click on it and do report connections and just connect it to my pivot tables. And look at that, I've not renamed that pivot table. So I'm going to select all these, yeah, and do OK. I'm going to rename this because I am AML, so I'm going to do pivot table analysis. Let's call this pivot table head count detail. Yeah, do return. So now when I select this, I can see there's no project costs and there's nothing going on in 2024. If I do 2025, I can start to see some demand in October, November 26, and then things start to jump up. Now what would also be good here is if I can see what the total cost is up here as a label. Now I can't, so as far as a label's concerned, so I have to have a so let's do total cost there. If I click on the chart and do insert and do text box, and let's just put that there, and then within the text box do a formula size equals this cell, it'll bring it into that cell. And if I do put a 1 on the end of that, you'll notice it's dynamic, it changes. Wonderful. So let's just make sure that the is all there. Yep. Now, so I need to be able to, what I want to do is, as we filter, I want, based on the selection, I want this to appear within here as a total. But I can't reference a pivot table. So I need to pull that into a cell here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do equals. So I'm going to do in quotation marks total cost and do colon space, then do the ampersand and then reference the pivot table there and do return. So now if I click this text box and I point it to that cell, wonderful. But it still doesn't look great, does it, because of the formatting. So let's see if we can do something with the formatting. So here, if I click this, and I just before the where the get pivot table data is, if I do text, open bracket, and then after the get pivot statement, do comma, and then do quotation marks, and let's do pound hash comma 0. In fact, now let's do 0 comma 0 to quotation marks, close that. Let's see what that does. Boom. So now, so let's make that full stop. Let's see what that does. So again, just play around with it. I'm just going to do comma there and do return. That looks better, doesn't it now? Right, and if I go to my summary, it's there. So I don't need that there. So now when I select stuff, I'm getting an error because there's no cost there. But then when I select something with a value in, I get a value. So again, being OCD, we need to cure that. So if I just go into this and do if error, so I get an error with that, meaning there's no value. I'm just going to do nothing, leave it blank and do return. So now if I go into my summary and do that again, it's fine. Things work. And there you go. Now, one of the useful things about this, so if I look at 2025, is you can start to do data modeling. So I can, if I look at my architects, I can say I've only got one architect. So I've got a problem as far as my demand. So I can go into my data, for example, and I can start modeling this. So I can start saying, right, let's put 5 architects in as a head count. Go back to my summary, and if I do data, refresh all, let's see what that does to our picture. There we go, it's refreshed. But now you can see, as far as the head count, you can now see that, yeah, I'm good as far as demand. And again, I can look at business analysis. So that goes all the way up to there to 13. So again, if I go to my data, and let's do one more here, let's do BAs, let's put 14 in there. Go to my summary, and I'm going to do refresh all data. And there you go. So now you can see I've now got capacity. PMO, you can start working through this and seeing what it means to satisfy your demand as far as your required resources and capability. So that is where I'm going to end today's video. And that's really showing you how you can take your resource pool information and see if you've got enough capacity and capability to deliver your portfolio
and how much that demand is going to cost as well. I hope you found it useful. And if you'd like to see more on resource modeling or any other ideas, please let me know in the comments. And please remember to click that like, subscribe, and smash that notification button for future content. And as always, I wish you an absolutely wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Please take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video from Change Tips and Tools. Bye bye now.